Welcome back to another episode of Advice from the Heart with my favorite networking guy, Chris Hart. My name is Garrett Sussman of iPullRank. How you doing today, Chris?
I'm good. I'm glad I'm just your favorite networking guy.
Well, it just fits into the theme of this is actually the second part of a couple of episodes that we're doing. Last time we talked all about, having goals and having a great post-pandemic in-person networking experience, but this time it's kind of like the other side of the coin, the devil's playground, if you will. What are all the things that you absolutely should not do when you go to a networking event that's going to get your reputation tarnished and blacklisted and your company hating you? You've been not you've been there, but
I've been hated.
You've seen the bad stuff. What are some of your top things when it comes to the don'ts of networking events?
I think you need to know your surroundings. Very important, right? Like, as a person who worked a lot of search trade events, there were always the trade show events, then the vendor events and client events, and then there were after-hour parties, which occurred, right? But then there were always the private parties, and the private parties are places where you could cut loose a little, right? You're in your inner sanctum of trusted souls, right? Where you could be a little more loose, right? And everybody who's in that private setting understands the protected sanctum, right? It's like what goes on in a private party stays in a private party, and it's for good reasons, because a lot of people at trade shows are under a lot of stress. Trade shows can be very stressful for a lot of people. A few don'ts that come off the top of my head, right? Don't extend yourself past your knowledge when you're speaking with somebody. You don't always have to be the potentially smartest person in the room. It is sometimes really, really valuable to just be the person to go up to that person and say, that was awesome and I really learned something from you. You don't have to be the one-upper. Don't be the one-upper and always try to out-card somebody. And don't say stuff that are just patently false, because you'll get called on it, right? For those that have been around as long as I have, there was this one time at a trade show where this one gentleman got up and was saying, I know the Google algorithm and this thing and that, and there's no way. Everybody in the room knew it wasn't. And this other moderator, we'll just say his first name, last initials, Dave S., took him to task. And it became, he literally became this guy's Bigfoot, right? Where every time this person made a post, the social people from other agencies hammered him on everything and literally almost chased him out of the industry, right? Because transparent, you'll get called on stuff. Don't be anywhere where you shouldn't be, right? From a knowledge standpoint. On the other side, don't overextend yourself on the party scene. I mean, that's an obvious.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't want to be the person in a party where you're drunk and passed out and people are taking photos with you. I mean, at the time when trade shows were still happening, you had Twitter and you had Facebook, and there was, iPhones was still newish and coming out, and social media was beginning to poke its head out of the ground, right?
Yep. Now
you could really, really damage your career and your company and your clients
instantly.
Turn in your business cards if you still have business cards. We talked about that the last conversation, but let me get your conference pass and go home now.
Yeah.
So here are some bad stories, right? I'm not going to mention people's names, but a gentleman who was a sponsor of an event was passed out and he lost his job. He was fired from a major software company because of how, inebriated
Presented himself. Yeah.
Yeah. And it was not the fact that he got inebriated. It was the fact that other people so violently talked about it or vehemently talked about it. And it really messed up his career for a while. He was a really smart guy. He just fell into the, social fame of the moment, per se. Right.
Well, to that point, it's like, even with your inner sanctum as well, I think you have to be aware of what you share or overshare, what you're saying to who, because there's also like, especially post-pandemic, you don't know the context of so many people and what they're going through. So it's always err on the side of sensitivity when it comes to when you are running your mouth. Obviously you want to be professional in the first place, but like, don't never get too casual that you're not conscious of what you're saying and who you could be putting off.
Yeah, and and the tremors or results of what occur at a trade show could happen much later on, right? Like,
right.
I remember an individual, and sometimes at trade shows you get insider conversations with companies, and they make you sign an MNDA to go into the event, and they start talking to you about things that are not publicly shared. And this person then went out and was like, "Oh, I just left the blankety blank, and they blanked," and then job lost, gone. The guy got fired. And you do get in trouble. You can't. And it's very easy to get in trouble. There are also sorts of offenses in another way. Like I remember at a company event where a person got too inebriated and got too forward with people, females, and
that's so unacceptable. Yeah.
Right, like he was literally let go on the spot and put on a plane back across the country, across the, to, he came from the UK, he was, and back, right? Like, and like in your head, like you say to yourself, like, he's now got this 10-hour flight. What's going through his mind? Like, how is he going to tell his family he lost his job because of what he did, right? And then other people, and then there's a really real opportunity for people to press charges in certain cases, right?
Yes, it's a lot of this should be common sense, and yet there is, in these situations, or maybe especially post-pandemic, people have forgotten what social, some things are way over the line and completely unacceptable under any circumstance, but don't forget where the line is. I'd say like one other tidbit is like, it's very tempting to be the popular person or to be the funny person in these networking situations. Understand what's appropriate and what's not. Don't hurt your career by trying to be too funny, right?
True. And, we talked in a prior segment about networking, right?
Yeah.
And I'm a pretty good power networker, right? I recently moved to a new town and I've been here for maybe about 2 years. And a lot of people know me now, right? But a year ago when I was just getting to know people, right? Like people like, how do you, like you go to school events and you introduce yourself and you do the right things and suddenly, boom, you're set, right? Imagine you go to a trade show and you do boom, you set, and your first foot forward is like a face plant because you're not acting correctly under whatever the circumstances are. Each iterative version of that next set of trade shows, you're going to be carrying that reputation along with you, and it sticks. Stuff sticks, right? For good or bad, stuff sticks.
Right. You want to develop a good reputation where people want to talk to you because they know that's the guy or girl that helps people, that that's the connector, that's the knowledgeable, that's the friendly, that's the smart person in our industry who is approachable. all that is the way to go about it. And I think that's a great way to kind of sum up this segment. Is we went through all the no-nos, and a lot of it's common sense, a lot of it is subtle, where you just have to kind of understand, and to your point, the way we started, read the room. What is maybe your final conclusion to this like networking post-pandemic approach that you think people should know as they're heading out to these events?
Well, so we talked about this on the other one, right? You want to go in with a game plan. You want to give before you ask, right? You want to provide value before you take value, kind of thing. And you want to have a next steps thing when you take away what you take away from that. The world has been kind of like locked up, and you know, there are a lot of people wilding a little bit, you know, because they got a little, you know, some freedoms are coming back. So I would say there's got to be a little bit of a little bit of worry on the trade show side, where you're suddenly going to have hundreds, maybe thousands of people walking around who have been locked up for 2 years, suddenly have their, you know, they're ready to go, and you've got like 2 years of energy in the tank, and you know, like maybe don't have a really long open bar, you know, something like that from an event planning standpoint. I don't know. I just think you gotta really, you know, time and, you know, my blue tape. The times have wildly changed. In a number of, what was acceptable socially is not, and then there are new things that are totally socially acceptable, right? So stay within a conservative swim lane, right?
Until you know.
Yeah. You don't want to step on any unintended landmines, because, and this is, I can't speak for every industry, but the SEO industry is big enough but still small enough to where, did you see, and oh my God, that, and before, you know, it moves fast.
Your reputation stick with you. Thank you again. I always love these. This has been another episode of Advice from the Heart with Chris Hart. My name is Garrett Sussman. We're of iPullRank Agency. We will catch you next episode.
Bye-bye.